He's the kind of guy who didn't even go to college and never made an effort to better himself. Your brother, with just a high school diploma, is a disgrace."
After saying that, Richard stared at us with a smirk. At that moment, as I stood under the gaze of the guests, I was utterly bewildered.
"Hold on. You don't know about my brother. He's a hospital director."
He didn't expect the groom, Ken, to speak up. Richard's eyes widened in surprise, but his face soon turned red with anger. He sneered at Kent and me in disbelief, but he soon had to face the truth. "My name is Keith Johnson. I'm 52, living a peaceful life with my beloved wife, but my life hasn't been without turmoil. My dad died abroad in an accident while on a business trip. I was only 10 at the time, and all I could do was pat my mom on the back as she collapsed in tears after hearing the news. She was pregnant then, and a few months later, my younger brother Ken was born. He only knew our dad through photos. My mom, who had been a stay-at-home mom until then, had to start working right after giving birth, which left her quite distressed. She was already heartbroken over my dad's sudden death, but she was also overwhelmed by housework, her job, and taking care of newborn Ken. I helped as much as I could, but over time, my mom's health declined under the stress of her busy daily routine. She juggled several jobs, and my share of household chores naturally increased. After dropping my young brother off at daycare, I'd head to school, then pick him up after classes and carry him home. While waiting for Mom to come back, I'd fold laundry and cleaning, doing whatever I could to help, so she could prepare dinner as soon as she got home. As this lifestyle continued, my brother grew up, and I became a high school student. Wanting to make life easier for my mom, I decided I'd start working right after high school. My homeroom teacher objected since I was one of the top students in my class and encouraged me to go to college. But I wanted to give my mom and brother hearty meals and make life a little easier for them, so I got a job right after graduating from high school. But there were no jobs in my hometown for an average 18-year-old with no special skills or experience. I repeatedly visited the employee service with no luck and became so disheartened that I lay down on the riverbank and just watched the clouds go by. That's when a man named James Murphy called out to me. He listened to my worries and told me he owned the Murphy Hospital in town and would hire me as a cleaner. I was overjoyed and leaped at the opportunity. "Please let me work here." From the moment I met James, my life brightened up. The workplace environment was fantastic, and the experienced cleaners taught me everything with great care. As a hospital, cleanliness was paramount. Hospital visitors often mistook me for a healthcare worker and asked me all sorts of questions. I started taking notes to ensure I didn't provide wrong answers. Noticing my hard work, James eventually entrusted me with more than just cleaning. He began assigning me tasks similar to those of his secretary.
"Keith, you are quick to understand and a fast learner. Could you assist me?"
"Of course, I'll work as hard as I can." James's proposal was half serious, but the other half probably came from his kindness in worrying about my future as an 18-year-old, finishing each day with cleaning job. Working under James expanded my view of the world, and I was truly grateful to have been hired by such a good person. As I learned the job diligently, my skill set grew, and my paycheck steadily increased. Thanks to that, my mom was able to ease out of her relentless work schedule and have a bit more comfortable lifestyle. But just when I finally felt at peace being able to support her, my mom collapsed at work and passed away. They said the harsh lifestyle up until then probably took its toll, but I couldn't help blaming myself. I work at the hospital and I didn't even notice my mom was sick. My support through it all, though, was Ken, who was still just in elementary school. Despite being deeply saddened by losing the mom he loved so much, he held back his tears and encouraged me. He threw himself into his studies and sports, doing his best to maintain the life our mom had protected. Seeing Ken's dedication gave me the courage to make a decision. From now on, I'll be both parents and raise Ken to be an adult. With that promise, I threw myself back into work. Ken did so well in school that his teacher suggested he should go to a prestigious middle school. But we couldn't afford the tuition, so I kept working as hard as I could. With our parents gone, I needed to put in extra effort, so I learned everything I could and dedicated myself to the job. Seeing my effort, James arranged opportunities for me to earn certifications useful for work. He let me study during my secretarial shifts and brought me thick professional books. I was surprised and asked, "Why are you doing all this for me?" Then James smiled and said,
Keith, I see how hard you work, and I know you're smart. Watching young people give their best makes me want to support them.
He provided options to broaden my future career opportunities, and I still feel deeply indebted to him for that. I wanted to save as much money as possible so Ken could pursue any career he wanted. Then, in high school, Ken said he wanted to become a doctor.
Mom died from illness, so I want to help those suffering in the same way.
Ken then decided to pursue a career in medicine. I supported him wholeheartedly, but he had to attend medical school to become a doctor. Medical school is expensive, so I worked even harder. Despite juggling his studies and stacks of textbooks, Ken did as much part-time work as possible to cover his tuition. In the end, Ken's efforts paid off, and he got into medical school. He kept working part-time and studying hard, eventually earning his medical license. When he told me he'd secured a position at our local hospital, I was so surprised and happy that my chest felt tight. Seeing Ken working as a surgeon, he looked so accomplished to me. But after he moved out to start his career, the house grew quiet and loneliness crept in. My goal had been to raise Ken well, but now that he'd achieved his dream and moved away, I felt an empty loss. But fortunately, someone came into my life to fill that void. It was Chloe, 7 years younger than me. She was James's daughter, and we'd known each other since she was 11. Strangely, Chloe always believed she would marry me from the moment we met.
When I'm grown up, let's get married, Keith. So, Dad, please take good care of Keith.
At 18, I was embarrassed by her proclamation and didn't know how to handle her constant talk of marriage. I blushed and scratched my head, but James just laughed it off.
Well, kids will say anything.
Our relationship changed when Ken found a job. The hole in my heart was perfectly filled by Chloe's presence. She worked as a receptionist at James Hospital, and I found myself looking for her. She'd wave at me cheerfully. After this became our daily routine for a while, James invited me to dinner and suddenly asked,
When are you two getting married? If you wait too long for the right moment, you'll miss the chance.
"Really? Someone like me can marry Chloe?" I felt unworthy of her since she graduated from a prestigious university while I went straight to work after high school. But James smiled and said,
Because it's you. Are you worried about your education or job? What matters is your feelings for each other.
My heartbeat quickened because my feelings were already set. So it was up to her to decide what she wanted to do. When I proposed to her on her birthday, she joyfully promised to spend her life with me, tears in her eyes. That's how I married Chloe. Since she was an only child, I initially considered taking her surname, Murphy. but both Chloe and James insisted I didn't need to.
It's your marriage. Choose the surname you like.
Yeah, there's no need to feel obligated to use Murphy because of my dad.
I wasn't trying to be considerate to anyone by choosing Murphy. I just wanted to cherish Chloe as much as James had, seeing how much he cared for her since childhood. But James' kind words made me decide to keep my surname, Johnson. 15 years have passed since our wedding, which was celebrated by everyone. I've heard that Ken is now a senior surgeon, helping the community, which makes me very happy. One day, Ken called to tell me he had someone he wanted to marry.
Her name is Jessica Brown, a 35-year-old working as an office clerk at the hospital. She's wonderful, kind, and caring.
I was surprised and overjoyed at Ken's engagement. Jessica is humble and always kind to her patients. Her serious and diligent personality made Ken want to spend his life with her. Ken and Jessica are in a committed relationship and told me about the wedding because it's becoming a reality.
I know you're busy, but I really hope you and Chloe can attend our wedding. What do you think?
Of course, we'll be there. Congratulations, Ken.
Chloe, listening in, nodded with a smile and agreed to attend. Jessica's father, Richard Brown, works at a major trading company and is quite busy. Since our schedules didn't align, we reached the wedding day without meeting each of her families. The wedding took place at a beautiful hotel chosen by Ken and Jessica. It's a well-known local venue, and the staff had prepared every detail perfectly. Jessica was calm and had a heartwarming smile that would put anyone at ease. She'll definitely support Ken in his demanding work as a surgeon. Hello, I'm Keith, Ken's brother. I've been looking forward to meeting you.
Ken always speaks highly of you. It's great to finally meet you.
Jessica's hobby is cooking, which she shares with Chloe. They hit it off right away, excitedly chatting together. It was the bride's father, Richard, who interrupted us.
Are you Keith? I'm looking forward to meeting you.
I had been worried since we couldn't meet beforehand, but it seemed like things would work out. Just as I sighed with relief, the time for the ceremony approached. After a solemn wedding ceremony at the Serene Chapel, there was a reception in the afternoon. Initially, the atmosphere was quiet, perhaps due to the many business associates present, but eventually the conversations picked up, filling the hall with cheerful chatter. The reception went smoothly with the MC, and soon Richard, the bride's father, began his speech. He already seemed to have drunk quite a bit, his face flushed as he gleefully held the microphone.
Hello, my name is Richard Brown.
He expressed his gratitude and shared words of celebration for his daughter's big day. But as his speech went on, it gradually shifted into boasting about his family background. Jessica's expression at the main table grew sadder and sadder, and I became increasingly concerned.
I graduated from a renowned New York university. My wife and daughter Jessica also graduated from prestigious women's colleges. For generations, our family has always worked hard and become highly educated elites.
The hall fell into stunned silence at his words. Mistaking everyone's attention for admiration, Richard spoke with even more pride.
Ken is a good young man, worthy of marrying Jessica. He's working as a surgeon at the local hospital.
His speech continued, but he was clearly getting more intoxicated and started swaying on his feet. The staff subtly tried to nudge him to finish, but he brushed them off and made a shocking statement.
But there's one person here who doesn't belong. It's the groom's brother, Keith.
He stared at me with a smirk. I was utterly bewildered as all eyes turned to me.
He didn't even attend college and never worked to improve himself. He probably has a lousy job. A high school grad brother is a disgrace.
Wait a minute. Richard, you don't know about my brother. He's not in a lousy job. He's the director of the Johnson Hospital.
He didn't expect the groom, Ken, to speak up. Richard's eyes widened in surprise, but his face soon turned red with anger.
What? Who is the director?
My brother, Keith, is the director of the Johnson Hospital.
Richard was clearly taken aback, but soon became flushed with anger.
Stop lying. Keith didn't go to college. How can a high school graduate become the director of a hospital? This isn't funny.
He twisted his face in disbelief, hurling insults at me and Ken. Over the years, people have often said things when I mentioned that I started working straight out of high school. But I always let it slide. However, the thought that Ken might not find happiness if someone who would insult people like this became his father-in-law crossed my mind. Just as I was about to stand up,
If anyone should be the director, it's Ken. A high school grad should know his place and lead.
In that case, I'll be the one to leave.
Ken answered calmly, and Richard peered at him.
What are you talking about? You're a promising doctor at Johnson Hospital. I've heard you've been promoted quickly, so I approved your marriage to Jessica, thinking you'd become the director.
I never thought you'd be after my status, Richard. But you seem to be confused. My brother Keith is the current director. I'm just the doctor.
Ken firmly stated this, but Richard still couldn't believe it. He looked around the hall as if seeking an ally, desperately defending himself.
That's impossible. I saw you dining with the director of Johnson Hospital.
Keith invited me to dine with a previous director. Keith has family ties with him.
Finally, Richard stood there with his mouth agape. The previous director of Johnson Hospital was my mentor, James. And it was me, James's son-in-law, who inherited the directorship. That doesn't mean I became the director just because I married his daughter, though. While working under James, I became interested in the medical field. I had originally aimed to be a doctor, studying diligently throughout high school. It was James who supported my dreams when I had to give them up to earn a living. James knew I had always been a strong student and that my original dream was to become a doctor. He encouraged me to pursue higher education and suggested I attend medical school. At that time, James was taking care of me like his own child, proposing that I should give becoming a doctor a shot if I was up for it.
I'm aware it might sound irresponsible to say this, but I want to support you. The world can always use one more good doctor.
Convinced by James' persuasion, I decided to enroll in medical school. I studied relentlessly between work hours. And although I was 3 years delayed, I managed to get admitted to medical school. Throughout my university years, having James, an exemplary doctor, by my side for support helped me immensely in my studies. After graduating and obtaining my medical license, I began working as a doctor at Johnson Hospital. I gained a lot of experience interacting with many patients and mentoring new doctors. When I heard that my younger brother Ken had secured a job as a surgeon, I was surprised but also delighted. A few years later, James' health began to deteriorate, leading to discussions about the next hospital director. I was chosen from within the hospital because of my suitable qualifications. My managerial knowledge from previously serving as James' secretary, and my diverse experiences inside and outside the hospital. There was no opposition from James, and thus I became the director. Richard truly seemed unaware of this fact. He fumbled to take out his cell phone and began searching, then stopped and muttered in disbelief.
Could it be true? Is Keith really the director of Johnson Hospital?
Richard must have thought I was a high school graduate and mocked me. He looked around helplessly, but no one approached to support him. While watching his father-in-law's flustered state, Ken spoke up calmly.
Do you now understand that my brother Keith is indeed the director? There's no need for criticism, whether he's the director or just a high school graduate.
It's not my fault I didn't know. I was just telling the truth. What's wrong with that?
Even in such a situation, Richard couldn't admit defeat and responded with a red face. However, Ken, looking saddened, continued calmly.
Keith sacrificed his own future for me. He knew we were struggling financially and still chose to work right out of high school so I could follow the path I wanted.
Ken then began to share our life story. As he spoke, the room fell silent. Sniffles from emotional guests could be heard.
Keith was smarter than me and could have gone to a prestigious high school, but he worked hard and supported our lives for my sake.
I didn't know that because no one told me. Besides, emphasizing education is a general belief.
Richard responded, now visibly sweating as he realized his fault. But then it was Jessica, the bride and Richard's own daughter, who spoke up.
Just because you didn't know, do you think you can say anything? Not many can dedicate their lives for someone else like that.
Reprimanded sharply by his daughter, Richard visibly shrank. Jessica raised her voice, tears in her eyes as she looked at her father's disgrace. Ken moved closer to her, placing a comforting hand on her back.
Thank you for understanding, Jessica. That's why I deeply respect Keith. It's precisely because he always worked positively in tough circumstances that he could become the director of a busy hospital like ours.
This is outrageous. Keeping the truth hidden is a scam. You set me up to be humiliated, and I demand compensation.
Richard, now isolated as the villain, erupted furiously. He had already been quite drunk before the speech, and his flushed face grew even redder from his sudden burst of activity. As confusion swept over the room, it was Richard's wife, Susan, who stood up. Seeing her approach, Richard exhaled a sigh of relief and let his guard down, regaining his previous arrogant demeanor.
You understand, don't you? It's infuriating that someone like Keith, with only a high school diploma, could later become a doctor. He once gave up on studying, and now he wants to stand on equal ground with us well-educated people. It's disgraceful.
Absolutely disgraceful.
Susan replied softly, almost as if muttering. Puffing up with pride, Richard echoed.
Indeed. It's disgraceful to attend such a lavish wedding, oblivious of one's place. Sure, he may be a director now, but he can't compare with the academic pedigree of an elite family like ours.
But when I said it was disgraceful, I was referring to you, Richard.
Me? Richard muttered in disbelief, his eyes wide.
Judging people based on education or occupation. What have you learned in all your years out in society? What's important is one's character and actions.
What exactly does that mean?
Richard assumed his wife would be on his side. Instead, she stared back at him with a stern expression.
Do you remember when I had that severe illness and underwent surgery at Johnson Hospital a few years ago, despite all the help we received?
Of course I remember. Ken performed your surgery. I knew he was a talented surgeon, so I approved of the marriage.
Susan sighed, seemingly in disbelief at his response.
Ken was indeed a huge help, but it was Keith who decided to take on my complicated surgery in the first place.
Really?
Richard froze, mouth open in shock. Susan had been diagnosed with a serious heart condition a few years back and needed immediate surgery. The complexity was so high that no hospital wanted to undertake the operation. However, I consulted with Ken, and we made the decision to operate on Susan. I joined the surgical team and assembled a dedicated team. Because I am an anesthesiologist. The heart is the organ most crucial to life, and cardiac surgery is the most challenging. Heart surgery often causes arrhythmia, irregular blood pressure, and changes in heart rate, putting immense strain on the patient. Compared to surgery on other parts of the body, such as the stomach or large intestine, it is even more stressful on the patient's body. Therefore, anesthesiologists need to use more than 10 different kinds of drugs and various medical equipment to keep an eye on the patient's body to make sure nothing abnormal happens. While the surgeon is treating the heart, we anesthesiologists check the details with an echo from behind the heart. They also use echocardiograms to monitor the heart and provide instructions to the surgeons. It is an important role to supervise and control whether the heart is finished in a neat shape and sewn together without any gaps during the surgery. There are only a few anesthesiologists around, and only a few of them are skilled enough to handle even more difficult surgeries. Therefore, having my experience and participation, Ken, a surgeon, and I, an anesthesiologist, were able to work together to make Susan's difficult surgery a success. With tears welling up, Susan thanked me.
It's thanks to Keith and Ken that I could regain my health. Thank you for accepting and succeeding with my surgery.
It was just part of our job. I'm glad to see you well. Susan smiled warmly. But Richard seemed completely taken aback by this exchange. Certainly, Richard felt immensely embarrassed, having berated the doctors who had operated on his wife. His face, which had been red with anger, now turned pale as he bowed his head in silence. The shock of realizing who I really was and being scolded by his wife Susan in front of everyone seemed to have deeply affected him.
Keith, I didn't know you were such a capable doctor. It would have been helpful if you had told me from the start that you were a skilled physician and the director.
Richard muttered, looking nervously towards me.
Keith, I apologize for my husband's extremely rude behavior. Please forgive us.
Susan said, apologizing on his behalf while Richard stood beside her, seemingly lost in thought. Noticing he hadn't said anything, Susan sharply turned to him and urged,
What are you doing? Apologize now.
I'm sorry.
Richard finally mumbled an apology after a stern nudge from Susan. Thus, we were finally able to continue with the reception. After that, Richard became much quieter. Previously, he had flaunted his status as his family head, often being arrogant even towards his family, but the roles seemed to have reversed after the wedding. He realized just how out of touch his views were from the general consensus and began to reflect. A few days after the wedding, Richard visited my hospital and confided,
All my life, I was taught that without a high degree, you're a loser in this era. That was all I knew. But I see now that times have changed.
He then sincerely apologized again and expressed a wish to have a good relationship with me as Jessica's brother-in-law and as a family member by marriage. It was clear he had changed significantly. He stopped taking his frustrations out on his employees and no longer blamed others for his mistakes at his work. He was now leading a calmer and more respected life. As for me, life continued to be hectic with managing my hospital and practicing as a doctor. While I still have much to learn, the support from my medical colleagues and nurses, as well as guidance from James, has been invaluable. I'm confident that together we can face any challenges that come our way. Adding to the joy, exciting news arrived. Ken and Jessica were expecting a baby. Given Jessica's age of 35 and the circumstances of her first pregnancy, we decided she would be looked after at our hospital. Each month, I eagerly look forward to the prenatal checkups, watching the baby grow healthy. By next year, we anticipate the arrival of a new, joyful member to the family. I'm determined to continue providing the best medical care in our community. Stepping out of my office with this resolve firmly in my heart,